put one step into the entrepreneurial journey, so you can learn by asking questions. So meeting new people. So for today's event, I invite Shashank, who is the founder and CEO of Deskera open source. And it's my pleasure to have Gwen, she the founder of SME entrepreneurs, is a leading tech blog in Singapore. She will help me to moderate the talk today. Let's give a big round of applause to welcome Gwen and Shashank.
I'd like to point out that Gwen agreed to do this 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. So you can tell, very last minute, very set up. We set up Gwen. So first, thank you for the honor, Son, and thank you, Shashank. I first met Shashank a few weeks ago, and since then I've met his team and everything. So today is especially special for me to, with everyone here and just moderating this. So first, with Startup Brand, it's meant to be a session that's focused on you as an entrepreneur. Meant to come for you to tell us your story. So we'd like to spend the first few minutes, kind of, can you tell us your background story, your early youth? What happened before this year? What were you doing? Back in India, I know a little bit about that, but tell everyone.
Thanks, Gwen. And thanks, Son, for organizing this. I come from India, and that's pretty obvious, right?
Oh.
Good point. So I studied in a university in India called IIT. It's one of the well-known places to study in study. And this was 2003-4, the time when .com boom happened in US and then we had a bust. If you go back to 2004, you'll see for about 4 or 5 years there were no startups from the year 2000 to 2005. Facebook came out in 2006-7. So during that period, we were going through some sort of IT recession, and I was completing my education, and the whole model of startups, especially in Asia, wasn't evolved by then. So when I started out, this whole startup thing, I come to Singapore now, and I see startups taking up rent, taking up shared spaces like, the hub is one of them, and then you have to go in downtown, and they have many places of shared co-working, which is a concept now. You can just take up a place for $500 and start up. In my time, you had to find a big or small office, get a rental agreement out, show your books, the whole team. I just signed up a rental agreement for one of the buildings here, DBS Tower 1, and I had to show my books and for, I had to do the whole, the whole dance, song and dance that a startup cannot do. Because you don't have books, right? You're not making profits. You're not, a startup is not, revenue generation machine. Today I can do that, but back then I had no support, especially in India. So I thought, I'll make my company about making money, more money than I spend, and I speak that a lot. That I value entrepreneurs who take up spaces in, malls, mothers, single mothers who take up spaces in malls and sell and make more money than they spend, and go back with money, and go back with their earnings and spend their life around that. And not entrepreneurs who come and sit like me and speak about their companies, while their companies are not doing well, and while their ideas are just in the air, in the cloud. So I value those entrepreneurs. I'm not taking a judgment call here, but I value entrepreneurs who stick to their plan and make money. And I thought I would be one of those entrepreneurs. So when I started out, I started serving local businesses with an ERP solution. And I wrote the first code for Deskera. Deskera is what we now call as a cloud solution, but back then cloud was a very new concept. If any of you have been tracking the whole IT scene, back in 1999, this was called as ASP, Application Service Provider. And then around 2007, we started calling it on-demand. And then we started calling it SaaS. And then we are now calling it cloud. So if you do a search of cloud on YouTube and just search cloud and Larry Ellison, you'll find a video of Larry Ellison, the CEO of Oracle, making fun of cloud. This is what he says. He says, it has always been internet. We can call it cloud, SaaS, on-demand, because we want to sell this to the next company, sell it as a concept by making it more sexy and get more investment, but it has always been internet. So I built my software for internet, and back then in India, nobody was doing that. I tied up with telcos in India, and I started supplying my software through internet. And this became successful in a small way. And instead of going to US, I went to US as well, but that's another story. I came back to Singapore, and I realized the SMEs here value technology in a very practical way. So they won't buy your software unless they can make more money out of it. And this is the ethos of Asia. And this is the ethos of, this is why we are doing well. This is why Singapore is not in recession. This is why India is not in recession. This is why China is not in recession, which is we value, we're built from ground up. There's a lot of hype here, but the hype doesn't outweigh, hype doesn't outweigh the fundamentals. So I thought, I'll build a business here in Singapore, and it's been a good journey. And this is my first public discussion on my company. I don't do that a lot. One of my investors is Sequoia Capital, and the guy running it is called as Inglantan. It's his name actually. But Inglantan is a fabulous gentleman. This person is running this awesome company, awesome venture capital fund, Sequoia Capital, and he said, let's take this company to the markets, or other markets like China and Japan, and let's talk to the people about our success stories, and let's tell entrepreneurs how we did what we did, and that's why Sean got in touch with us, and that's why I'm here. But going back to why I started out, I never thought I would be in a position where I would give interviews, or that was not my motive. My motive was to make more money than I spent. During those IT years, it was very hard to get a job. During those IT recession years. So I thought, I'll set up my own company because I wouldn't get a job. And that was my first idea to start up. My friend Somesh has been with me for forever. We were together since we were 6 years old. We went to IIT together, and he was my first employee. And he has been with me forever. So I told him, look, instead of finding jobs, instead of being a burden to other companies, let's do something on our own. And thankfully, it turned out well.
And it's been what, 8 years, yeah? Since
about 8 years.
So let's break it down a little bit and go back a little bit more to kind of when you were in university. You talked a little bit about that, and prior to finding a job. And I know through our discussions, and just when you mentioned Larry Ellison, I want to go a little bit more in depth into what motivated you, what inspired, who or what inspired you?
There's a book on Amazon called as Software, SOFTWAR. If you are an entrepreneur, if you have interest in getting building software, you should read this book. This book is about Larry Ellison, a guy who built a company called Oracle. He's the number 2 or number 5 richest person in the world today. There are a lot of questionable things that he has done, and I'm not going to go into those things because every person has a grace, has a dark side. We all have our skeletons. We look nice because we're not in public view all the time, right? But when you put camera on somebody, you'll find that they are doing things that are not morally acceptable. So I'm not going to go and talk about other side of it. But you can do your search. But this guy has built a company, Oracle. Now, if you look at Oracle has acquired every other enterprise IT company, IT software company in the past 6-7 years. So there were companies that were very well known, like PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft was the standard for HR software. Then there's a company called JD Edwards. JD Edwards was the standard for ERP. Then there's a company called Siebel, which was a standard for CRM. So he went and acquired all these companies when the stocks were down, when we were down in the dumps in those times, recession times, 2007. And then he funded 2 companies. Not many of you know, but he is the main investor behind Salesforce. And he's the investor behind NetSuite. So this guy, Salesforce is leading cloud, right? And Salesforce is the torchbearer of the space, cloud. But this guy invested in Salesforce before Salesforce was Salesforce. So when you read about his story, you'll see some patterns. The patterns are, if you have to build an enterprise business, you have to be very consistent. You have to be, you have to take the same story over and over and over again. You have to be consistent, you have to be persistent. And that pattern doesn't gel well with typical startup model, which is work for something for 6 months and then sell it off, quit, do something else. And if you see, Twitter and Tumblr and Pinterest and a lot of other, Instagram, that's how they build their companies. Their model is to build a very huge fan base, build a company that has a huge user base, and then flip it off, flip it to the next company that buys you. And that's all good and dandy. But if you have to build an enterprise company, and if you have to build a company that's very cheap, if you have to build a company that makes, again, the keyword is makes more money than you spend. If you have to build a company that doesn't, that you don't have to build a business plan on and sell to your VCs and sell to investors. And if you want investors to come to you, then you have to build a company that has more fundamentals. And in Asia, we are known for that. So I was talking to Gwendolyn a couple of weeks ago. I told her, I live next to a guy who's a property dealer. And I drive a nice car, he drives nicer cars than me. He drives Lamborghini and Ferraris. And I meet him, he's my friend, I meet him all the time, and I ask him, do you know anything else other than property selling? He said no. And his whole focus is on property and property ownership. And if you ask a question on any property in Singapore, he will have an answer. So the thing I learned from him and Larry Wilson is that if you are consistent and you're focused on your area, and you have a long-term vision that this is what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do anything else, I'm not going to sell this company, I'm not going to quit, I'm not going to go to, I'm not going to do my MS and MA and PhD, but I'm just going to build this company and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Then you will be successful. It'll take you more time than you estimate. There'll be highs and lows, but if you're consistent and if you can rally your troops around you, you'll be successful. Larry Wilson started out in 1976 at the age of 42. Imagine, 76, 42. Two other companies were formed when he was forming, Microsoft and Apple. These were hippie companies. Microsoft was started when the guy was 90. Steve Jobs started Apple in 21. But Larry was starting on at 42. Not many know that. We gave up at 42, right? I'm not 42 yet, but I'm pretty sure I'll give up at 42. But he started out at 42. Today he's about 70 years old. Imagine. So he said to himself, I'm just going to do this. And he had lived his life doing a lot of things that didn't work out. But when he started Oracle, he said, I'm just going to do this. And then he had partners come in and go out for every few years. He had another co-founder who came in and they split. But he just stuck to the business. And then finally in 1998, they IPO'd. But in 1992, they almost went bankrupt because of some questionable sales practices, which I don't recommend. I would rather, not go into that. But then he still stuck to his plan. And then in 94, they were back. And then during the .com boom, Oracle was kind of, people said Oracle was going to die because Commerce One and Ariba and SAP were the new kids on the block. And everybody wrote Oracle off. But he came back and he was very consistent. He said, I'm going to buy every other company. So he bought PeopleSoft, he bought Hyperion very recently, and he bought Siebel. All that is history now. So what I learned from his story is that if you're just consistent, if you just wake up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning and say, look, this is what I'm going to do every day, day after day, you're going to be successful in some time. And it might take you 10 years, it might take you 15 years, but if you just do that, you're going to be successful. Now what I see in entrepreneurs is people don't do that. People, they talk a lot, but they don't walk their talk. So if you don't do that for, you can't just do that for 3 months and say, I'm going to be enough. That's my message. And
tenacity, yeah. Tenacity.
They look like very easy words, right? But when I was down in the dumps, it was very hard to get up in the morning and say I'm going to go to my office and pay my rent.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Down in the dumps. There's one question that's not really clear as well. What and when was the turning point for Deskera to take off?
My company has always self-funded. We got investment, VC investment last year. We haven't even announced it, so we haven't announced it. And
video, by the way.
Sorry.
It's on video.
Whoa!
It got SG.
Sorry, England. We were always self-funded throughout my history. We were self-funded. still have that instinct that I should make more money every single day that I spend. And when you're self-funded, you need to hire people, you need to hire programmers, you need to hire your place. And even if you're doing well, you know, my customers pay me in 60 days, 90 days, some of them pay me in 180 days. You know, I have a customer in India that hasn't paid me in like 6 months. That's Indian story, I'm sorry. But that's what it is. And then even if you're doing well, cash in pocket is very important. And if you are a businessman, that is recommended. That going through that phase of not having enough cash every morning is what every entrepreneur has to go through. And it's up to the entrepreneur's will and the tenacity on whether he will walk and give up and then go find investors. Or will say, look, I'm going to just cut my cost and make sure I'm profitable, so that I don't have to beg for investors. So what I never did was write emails to investors. I never wrote a presentation. I don't even have a, you know, so much knows that we don't have a PowerPoint dossier, investment dossier. My dossier is accurate report. So if you ask me, I'll give you my accurate report. I gave my accurate report to my real estate agent. That's my dossier. You see my accurate report, see how much I'm making, and that's about it. I'm not in the game of multiples. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, as long as I do that.
How did the Sequoia Capital investment come about?
They are smart people. They're smart people. They'll figure out if a company is doing well. They'll figure it out. Now, one of my key customers is Google, and you know, Google in Asia Pacific. Again, I'm not supposed to say that. It's a name, but they use a lot of our core libraries.
That's a questionable sales tactic.
See, the thing is that if you work with large companies, I just signed up an NDA with a large company here today. I'm talking about that. But large companies will probably don't want to talk about what they're doing. You know, it doesn't look good on their part to be working with a small vendor, and I have no issue with that. But if you look at the engagement in Google, it's sufficiently public. I have their logo on my website. So if a company is working with large brand names like Starbucks and Google, they must be doing something well. And Sequoia is known for finding out jobs. And they're known for hunting companies that are doing well. And they look at your balance sheet and your financials, and that's about it. And Sequoia and some other VCs are very hardcore VCs. They will never look at your dossier or your tech. They'll just come to your office. So when Sequoia did investment, they came to my office. They sat for 2 days. They brought accountants, they brought bankers, and they said, open your books, open your bank details, and let me see, hard numbers. So that's what they do.
So can I summarize it like the first kind of point of contact was someone from Sequoia contacting you and saying, hey, I like what you're doing so far, seems interesting, your business seems good, can I come into your office, have a chat?
It took about 2 years. The whole process took 2 years.
Very long commitment.
Yes, and if you engage with a VC it's a game of chicken. It's a game of link. If you engage with a VC with the assumption that it's going to pay you money for your own company, you're going to lose the game, and you'll probably lose your company as well. So VCs invest in companies that are doing well without them, that can do well. So they come in and say, look, you can probably do 3x, 4x. We can come in and maybe do 10x. But if you're doing 0x, no amount of multiplication.
So over the 2 years, was it kind of them periodically checking in with you on your books? You opening your books periodically?
Yes, so the book thing was the last thing.
So after Sequoia, when was so investment was made about a few months ago? You said the money
This was last year.
Last year, okay, but not announced yet. Any reason why?
There is no reason why, I have a few customers here, prospects here, who don't care about Sequoia, who care about my features, and who care about the fact that I can provide them services. They don't even I'm not a consumer company, right? So my buyers don't care, and there is no reason for me to be a very, very well company. So our whole model is to be under the radar, so that I'm fighting a war with SAP, which is, if you ask me, Shashank, what are your 5 competitors? I'll tell you 5 companies that are $1 billion right now. Right? SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, Microsoft, Sage, $1 billion companies. The smallest company that I'm fighting a war with is called MYOB. MYOB got bought for $2 billion last year.
I checked, it's $1.1 million.
It's in dollars.
I'm still the multiple.
It's $1 billion. Who cares?
Yeah, it is, yes.
If I promise to and give you 1 million, say no. That's the point. $1 billion, right? And if somebody is, if a company has $1 million in cash, how can you fight the company with $10 million invested? So you can't fight the war. You can't fight war. You can't fight fire with fire. You can't say, look, I'm going to overspend. Then you, like, if you have taxis and buses here, plaster. I'm going to plaster my, my name on airports, and that doesn't make sense. So the only way you can make it work is taking the Android strategy. Now, what does Android do? If you had to, so this phone, iPhone, was the first phone which was groundbreaking, right? When iPhone came out, nobody was, you couldn't compete with iPhone. It took 5 years for somebody else to come in. But who's defeating iPhone? Windows 8? No. iPhone is being defeated by an open source product, which is free to use. So if you have to defeat a very focused $400 billion cash company, you go the other way. You make it some open source, you talk to the community, and you build your company product.
Okay, I want to take a step back first, because I don't really know what kind of profit audience is. Just for those who are new to enterprise software, to open source, can you describe what Deskera is, who are your competitors, what is your product, target customers, and what is open source?
Yeah, so I'm sure all of you have, at some point in time, bought software or bought stuff from restaurants. So let's say you buy something from this guy here. He punches his POS machine, uses a point-of-sale machine, and gives you a receipt, right? And you get a receipt and you go home. But for him, the journey of money starts at the point where you give money. So that person has to then account for your money and then pay his inventory costs and pay some guy who he bought beer from, and then pay his rent. So he can either do that on a pen and paper and just take all calculations and say, look, I'm going to keep track of all my money coming in, money going out, and have a large register for that. Or he or she can go and buy software. I built that software, and that software is called as an ERP software. That software helps him or her manage his inventory or her inventory. Let's be agnostic. Him, I just call it. Or her. Yeah. So that's actually a her. But so my software is easy to use software that she can load on a computer and link to the POS, the point of sale, the thing that she punches in the person. And then the software will take over the role of the person doing calculations, the person churning out invoices and doing paperwork for you, the person who goes and submits your CPF to IRAS, the person who goes and makes your payroll. The software will go and do all of that, and at the end of the month, give you a report on how much you spent and how much you made in a very easy to see interface. So what I'm doing here is that I'm empowering small businesses to use software to increase productivity, so that they don't have to hire more people. So that they don't have to go and do it themselves. The software can do that, and that's software called as ERP. The other software that I built is called a CRM. What CRM does is basically tell you who your customer is. And I do this with EDCs here. I did a large event last few weeks ago with ASME, EDC, Association of Small Medium Enterprise, and I told like 500 people who had no idea what software was. I told them how to use CRM to sell more. The key is sell more. If you can use software to sell more, then you can pay me a part of that money that you make. And if you can make more money, then I have fulfilled my role, and I made you successful, and then you will pay me. So CRM helps you sell more. Today, if you walked in here, they don't know who you are. You just order a drink and you walk out. A CRM will let them know who you are, and that's the way to do that today is through a loyalty card or some sort of connection through your card, or just taking your feedback from a form or an iPad. So if you walk into some stores, they'll ask for a loyalty card like Starbucks, and they'll give you some percentage points. So interestingly, we are the company that does that for Starbucks. Starbucks is one of our large customers. And we enable Starbucks and other small SMEs to know their customers, so that they can then go and say, look, hey, we have a free drink session on Saturday. Do you want to come over? We have a new deal coming in next week. You want to come over? Now, interestingly, these things are so standard today that if you walk into larger stores like Isetan or bigger stores, they do this all the time, and they do this with scientific preciseness. They'll start bothering you with emails and messages. Small stores can't do that. Why? Because larger stores can buy expensive software from Salesforce and Oracle and SAP to do that. Small stores cannot spend that kind of money. I'm enabling small stores to not spend that much money and get the same software that an Isetan or a Carrefour or a bigger, larger chain has.
I always think of this example for Target in the US. So Target does a lot of CRM as well, and tracking the users and the buyers, right? And so this story has been going around. It's true apparently, which is that they send out mailers to prospective customers, right? Or customers who bought before. So they sent to this young lady addressed to her home some baby product stuff. So her dad got the mail and he called up Target and was like, why are you encouraging my daughter premarital sex, blah 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 blah. So then Target was apologetic, apologized and sent emails, whatever, talks. But ultimately it came down to this. Target knew that the daughter was pregnant before she got the mail. So it's how powerful it can be, right? So it's like, yeah, just support that.
Another example is in Walmart. On weekends, they'll keep beer next to bacon and eggs. And this is a very sad case study, and I'm sure if you know Sylvie from Insert here, she'll tell you that they teach you these case studies, examples of how Walmart has optimized the inventory based on people's purchasing power. Because on the weekends, single fathers buy their beer and then they buy baby diapers. And there's a large amount of single fathers who come into those stores. So how do they do that? If you go back and if you sign up for one of my free sessions that Brian will organize in next week, I'll tell you how you manage inventory and then align your buyers to your inventory. So you can link at a small store, link who will buy what, and kind of with some predictive power, you can tell who's going to buy what. So if you buy beer and you buy napkins, we can tell you they're probably going to buy chip as well. And that's why 7-Eleven stores stock the way they do. The knowledge of how you will go around the store is kind of, it's a science, it's not an art. It's not just that they stock everything everywhere. They have done studies, and the studies are done by softwares like inventory management.
So let's go back a little bit to open sourcing. We talked about that. So first, why do you want to open source a product? How do you balance between contributing back to the open source community and how do you stay profitable?
Well, so one misconception with open source is open source doesn't mean free. It means freedom. It doesn't mean free in the sense that I can guarantee you, amongst you, if you're SMEs, you don't sit here and say, I'm going to get the software for free. Nobody says that. Because you are worried that if somebody says something for free, you're not providing support. So open source means the freedom, the ability to take the software and then install it on as many servers or as many locations as possible, change the software if possible, and the fact that the software is much more stable, much more bug-free. So open source gives you the power to compete with larger SIs and companies like SAP and Oracle. And we took that approach because as a small company, we can't have the resources to do a lot of testing and the QA that an open source community can provide us. And with a quid pro quo, which means that I will open source this and you can use this, but if you find a bug, you have to report it, and if you find a feature that you can build, you have to contribute back. We have a community of about 1 million users worldwide that download my software, that use my software on a daily basis. However, they don't pay for it, then that's okay. But that's how you, as a small company, can grow big. And that's how, the example, the biggest open source project today is Android. And Android is beating iPhone. Android has 40-50% market share, and iPhone is going down because Android got into places like Samsung and other handset makers and made it very easy for handset makers to compete with iOS.
Okay, so one other question on that for the product side of things. What's your view on the landscape of integrated enterprise management software products served on the cloud within the next 2 to 3 years? It's a mouthful of questions on. so what's your view of your industry in the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years?
So I'll take this question differently. I'll tell you something. In the last 10 years, there's not been a single enterprise open source or non-open source enterprise company that has been very popular. And not a single, actually, if you look at, go to any startup scene in Singapore and look at the companies that are forming, you won't find a single company that has been ERP or a CRM. ERP, CRM would be, integrated enterprise mouthful of stuff, not mouthful of stuff, but this kind of stuff is very boring. And it takes years to kind of refine your software. For instance, in my software, if you go to CRM, you'll see there's an option to send quotation from leads, option to send quotation from opportunities, and then make a quotation, and then every quotation has to be in a way where millions of users can use that, customize that. So those complexities cannot survive in an environment where you are churning out software like Instagram or Twitter, which are the entities of enterprise software. So enterprise software takes a long time to build. The number one enterprise software today in Singapore is SAP. SAP was built in 1973. The most recent upgrade of SAP was done in 1999 at Weaver. So it's already 14 years old, but it runs fabulously, right? And I would never buy something that is not being tested for 2-3 years. And just if I sell my POS to her and it breaks down, she's going to lose business, right? And there's something that you can't risk your company on that. So enterprise software landscape 2 years will be the same, 5 years will be the same, 10 years maybe we'll be in top 3, 15 years maybe I'll buy a plane.
That's his goal, to join the growing company, plane, right?
Yeah, you might. That's so.
I can ask questions on this.
Yeah, please. Any questions from the floor? Yes, Rodrigo.
Oh,
okay, I'll repeat the question.
Don't speak Egypt.
Do you all hear that? So Rodrigo's question was, what? I don't know what the question was. Some plane.
Sorry, he mentioned the plane, so I was asking if he was considering the Phantom 300 Embraer or some other plane. I just asked him what plane it is.
Yeah, so I don't know things.
I like planes.
If this is not successful, this is going to be on YouTube, and people are going to laugh at you. So
no, you make a public, that. Yeah.
This is, sorry, another question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that in order to get investors such as Deskera, they don't invest in companies that are desperate. They invest in companies that could survive. So what's in it for you? What other all the extra that you get from there? I mean, did you really need investors at the time?
So the question was, do you really need investors?
This is a question every entrepreneur asks. Banks will not give you loans unless you prove that you don't need the loan. That's how it works. So at some point you have to take a call whether you need the loan or not. I got investments in Sequoia because of guys like Glenn Dan. I'm sitting here and talking to Gwen, who was introduced by this person. I would never get in touch with Gwen without the person. So I value the relationships more than money. And as I said, if I have 10 million bank, say SAP has $1 million. So there's no way 10 million will help me, right? But if I can get alliances, if I can get friends in companies that can look at my software, if Singapore Airlines can give me a chance, then I can learn from the processes and then take those processes to my SMEs. So my number one focus is to get into larger companies so that I can learn, my software can learn from those large processes, and then take those examples and case studies to my SMEs. And to get to those places, we need alliances, we need validation, right? And you're not going to see my software and do bug checking, right? You're going to take my word when I say security example, right? You're going to assume that, right, they might have done something before. And so the reason to get them to validate us is A, to address my insecurity, and B, that they give some basis to the company. I can't. Enterprise software is so boring that if I show you a project management software called Asana, which is very popular, you will never use it. But if I tell you it's funded by Facebook's co-founder, the sales done, right? So this is what it is. People don't give me a chance until I show them, that I've been vetted through by professionals. And Sequoia did a very good, last, do you know about that? On 28th, 29th, just 2 days ago, they brought 30 CEOs in Singapore to meet us for 2 days. CEO of DBS, startup. I met the startup CEO person in person. I would never get a chance to meet this guy. His watch was worth more than my whole company. So this guy is meeting me, having lunch with me because Sequoia invested and because he assumes that Sequoia is a developer. So kind of it's you can be a money back, but you still need validation. So that's why you get VCs to back you. And I would still recommend investors and entrepreneurs to go through a cycle of that's a mutual dance. But if entrepreneurs should get VCs at some point to get the validation. Interestingly, Sequoia also invested in Oracle. So Sequoia has invested in Oracle, Intel, every company other than Microsoft, Apple as well, YouTube, Google. So you have to ask why all these entrepreneurs are taking investment from these VCs.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Before you were talking about cash flow, being mindful of cash flow management. So my question is about customer support. So how do you manage the support staff? How many people you hire? And also the quality, how do you measure the quality of support?
Sorry, did anyone hear the question? How do you manage the quality of your support staff?
So, and this was linked to the cash flow question. When you are in the cash flow position, then you need to make sure that you have enough support staff, and that's a challenge. But at this stage, we have sufficient hand balance, sufficient backup. So I have a huge team of support staff, both in India and onshore here. But the key to support in this new age, new world, is to make sure your software is very open. So if you go to YouTube today and you type Deskera, you'll find thousands of videos on how to use features, and also you'll find tutorials. Our team does webinars, weekly webinars to our customers. Having said that, support is something that's very, very critical to investment. And I put my co-founder is Somesh, and his job is support. His #1 job is to make sure my customers are happy. And if you go to my website, you'll find numbers of my support staff, their personal mobile phone numbers that you can call and get access to. But at some point, you have to make your support much more personal and much more. You can't make it institutionalized, like please hold while I call you back. And that is true with every other big company. Even Apple does fabulous support. They don't have Apple stores here in Singapore, but in the US, the Apple Genius is buying people buy iPhones because Genius starts to solve the problems. So you have to invest in grow that business.
Thank you. One question. Sure.
Your products for small and medium businesses, how would you compare in terms of what it costs for those small enterprises compared to
So pricing of your products.
The pricing is on my website. It's very transparent. SAP is expensive. It's very expensive. And as my friends, I was just talking to a friend here, and he told me, what kills you is implementation, is consultants who come in later, and then they tell you it's going to cost a lot more than what you pay. Because of the reason why there are not many softwares, embedded software, and not many companies doing that, SAP is in a monopoly position, and they can do the bait and switch thing that we can't do. SAP is not okay. But these companies are known for bait and switch. They'll come and show you software, and then when you write the check, they'll come and say, no, this is not what you bought. You bought this version. You just watered down, stripped off version, and by the way, you have to pay another 100 grand to get your consultants. All you have to do is just use the name and type sucks on Google. You'll find tens of pages. I do that with my customers. I do Deskera search and do my competition sucks, and then we find pages. And you find pages of companies that have done bait and switch successfully for years. Sorry. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, there's a question there.
Respect to which IIT you from, that's basic question, and then also being an Oracle consulting and receivable. I've been using, my company been using Salesforce for some time, and now what I've done is I've not asked anyone, I've asked them to do it integrated on their own. How is it to integrate your software for say consultants?
So for someone who's already like talking to other products and how do they integrate with yours? So products integration.
How do you integrate your how is it integrate? Is it very easy to integrate your product?
We have sponsored an open source project called JSONic. JSONic is an SOS server which has definitions of a product. So if you, and this is open source, so if you install JSONic on-premise, JSONic can talk to 20 products, including SAP. This product has definitions that we're getting deep into products, so I don't want to continue on this.
No, I'm just saying about your product. So
no, this is our product that does integration. This is designed for integration. The idea is to make it, the whole area of integration today is being addressed by one product that's called a service-oriented architecture. And you have to have ESB, some sort of enterprise bus, which has definitions of the product and definitions of the product that you want to integrate to. And then the product does the handshake.
Does that answer your question? Okay, fantastic.
Okay.
Yes?
There are so many questions.
No, we kind of covered it. It was a conversation.
So developing a product like this is difficult. So when you are starting out, do you encounter a lot of challenges like you make a lot of changes and you use the Java methodology?
So product development at the beginning challenges.
Yeah, what are the challenges you encounter?
For enterprise, you have to, I think the biggest challenge is to find a customer. And this is a constant process. I'm still evolving the process, so software based on my customer's feedback. So if I learn of a new process, I put them back in my software. Enterprise software is all about processes. This whole stream is called as business process management. You want to design your software in a way that you can flexibly change the UI and the flows. There are three main terms: workflows, rules, and forms. Forms are what you see. Rules are the things that you see in the form, like drop downs, and then workflows are rules that link forms. So if you design your product on a methodology that you can change workflow, form, and rules from the front end, then you can have a flexible software that can adapt to different processes. And all the name brand software today follow this methodology, BPM methodology, and we follow this methodology. So if you download or you go to our website, you can go to Deskera and there'll be so much you can set up a demo with you. You can customize the process on the UI itself without having to go back to the code. And to do that, you have to build your software based on some standards.
Any other questions? If not, I've got a few closing ones. So you're from India, but now you're here in Singapore. You've been here for how long?
Yeah, I like this question. I love this question.
Okay, you wrote it. Answer your own question. Why Singapore?
The reason I say that is because everyone has this question for me. That why Singapore? Why Singapore? And I keep telling this to entrepreneurs here. Singapore is the east coast of India and the west coast of China. Singapore, 4 hours of flight, 2 billion people, right? There is no place on earth that has the first world, lifestyle, first world rule of law, IP law, first world broadband, and be in the middle of like 3-4 billion people. So if you look at Indonesia, around a billion, 3 billion people, right? If you look at Malaysia, Thailand, and then you have India, and then you have China. This is in 10 years. Singapore is going to be the center of world. As far as I'm concerned, I'm sure you go to US a lot. If you go to US, North America, you'll see the infrastructure coming down. You'll see, the whole civilization is in an advanced state of decay. You see the space plan being scrapped. You see buildings that are built 100 years ago, and they are like in Detroit, they're in disrepair. And when you come back to Singapore, you see Changi Airport just fantastically maintained, and you go to Suvarnabhumi Airport in Thailand, and you go to Bombay Airport, which is just fabulous. They just come up with this new terminal, and then Delhi Airport, and then Shanghai and Beijing. We have first world infrastructure, and we are coming up. Our economies, we have more people in our middle class, right, than the rest of the world, right? We have more people who have dollars to spend here. So I would put my money in Asia, I would put my money in Singapore, and Singapore has the best IP production in this part of the world. So if you ever set up a company which is IP, trademarks, patents, and have access to these markets, Singapore is the best place. Plus,
open source. process?
Yeah, the process. So we have parents, we have 6 parents on our software. We have trademarks. We are writing 1 parent every few weeks. The parent is to make sure that we, these are defensive parents so that we don't get sued later on. But this region is, I see a lot of local entrepreneurs selling in Singapore. The beauty of Singapore is not just Singapore. The beauty of Singapore is we can take a flight out and be in any part of the world here with billions of people and then sell and come back.
So, if you were to say, what's your final message for Singapore-based or Asia-based entrepreneurs? It's your question, I think. So you better have a good answer for that.
No, so I try to speak at these events and connect with entrepreneurs. The reason I came to Singapore is not to give up on India. I still, my large amount of my revenue comes from India, and I'm opening up China. The reason you have Singapore is so that you can have a very stable, very structured office setup, backup team here. You can, Cynthia is one of my partners. I run my data center on Cynthia. AWS, you can get access to Peter Camps. Peter Camps is the head of AWS. The PD here. You can call this guy in AWS. He'll pick up a phone in like few rings, and he'll meet you, and he'll help you set up your company with Amazon Web Services. You can find Google and get your things going. So Singapore is where you can get access to such large corporations that can use your software. And then once your software is designed and done, go to India, go to China, go to Thailand, go to Malaysia, go to Indonesia, go to Philippines, and just conquer the market. So Singapore is about access, and entrepreneurs here don't use that access for various reasons. Either we are complacent or we assume that something will. And there's a herd mentality. So if there's one builder, we have to have like 100 builders. You have to think out of the box. Use idea funds. I came here and idea helped me set up our R&D office. Just out of the blue, they said, look, you're doing something really good. You're building IP. We'll help you with funds. And idea has no business, giving funds to a foreign company, but they did that, and that showed me that gave me this warm feeling that I belong to this place, and someday I'm going to be here, my kids are going to be here, and I'm going to use the resources here to make sure we can be one of the top companies, the best companies in this region. And that's what entrepreneurs should do: take the resources here, take the best that Singapore has to offer, and then go and sell to the regions. Not just sell in Singapore, and not be the 20th food review blog or the 50th Twitter or the 60th mobile application company, but do something out of the box. And if you do that, Thailand is waiting for you. China is waiting for you.
To summarize, leverage your resources and think big, yeah?
Absolutely, Changi. Think Changi.
Think Changi, alright. Thank you so much, Shashank. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Shashank. I have a small token to bring for you. Thank you for the time to come and share with us. So time for your generosity to sponsor the food and so the drinks for all of us. Thank you for drop.
Just one moment. I need to, 2 of my salespeople have just met their quota, so I need to give them a gift. So much getting nothing out there. Can you get?
It's their own internal prize giving ceremony.
Just very quickly. So here's my fellow entrepreneur Brian. Brian is. Is my star salesperson. She gets an iPad for meeting her goals. Thank you guys, and you can drop me an email. I'm on Twitter. I'll be very happy to answer your questions and give you in person.
I adapted to crawl Google, LinkedIn, and find some you guys your profile. Put that on the link at hgp.site24.com. You can check on your phone and find out more about who's coming today. Bring to get on networking. We still have food and drinks. By the way, next week we will welcome Jason Su, the CEO of 99 Designs, in the world's largest marketplace for designers. We will host at the Tanjong Pagar area because the hub will be closed for renovation, so we moved to there. Feel free to come to next Friday. So hope you can enjoy the evening.